Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Pesachim. We are up to Perek Yud Mishnah Bet. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden. Amen. The following Mishnayot describe the process of the Seder, beginning with Kiddush, which was recited over the first of the 4 cups of wine. The Mishnah begins, Mazgulo Kos Rishon. They mix water into the first cup of wine for the leader of the Seder in preparation for Kiddush. And the commentaries explain, based on the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, page 77a, wine was so strong in those times that it had to be diluted with 3 parts of water. Now, the Tfilat Yisrael explains the reason we said that they would mix water into the first cup of wine for the leader of the Seder is although everyone is obligated to drink the 4 cups and perform all the other mitzvot of the Seder, the Mishnah says they mix for him, referring to the leader of the household who would recite the blessings on behalf of the others. It says they mix for him in the plural sense in order to teach that he should not pour the wine himself, rather as a sign of freedom, others should do so for him. Now, Kiddush consists of 2 blessings, one thanking Hashem for wine, Borei Pri HaGefen, and one declaring the sanctity of the Yom Tov Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim. The Mishnah now cites a dispute about the order in which they should be said. Bet Shammai Amrim, Bet Shammai say, Mevarech al Hayom, v'achar kach Mevarech al Hayayin. He first recites the blessing for the sanctity of the day, and then he recites the blessing for the wine. Since the sanctity of the day begins before wine is taken for Kiddush, the blessing should be recited in that sequence. Bet Hillel Omrim, but Bet Hillel say, Mevarech al Hayayin, v'achar kach Mevarech al Hayom. He first recites the blessing for the wine, and then he recites the blessings for the sanctity of the day. Since one says Kiddush only when one has wine, Bet Hillel say the blessing for the wine should come first. Now this dispute applies not only to the Kiddush recited at the Seder, but to the Kiddush of every Shabbat and Yom Tov, and it's discussed more in Masechet Brachot, chapter 8, Mishnah 1. That is the end of our Mishnah. We continue now with Mishnah Gimel. After reciting Kiddush and drinking the first of the 4 cups, the Seder continues as follows. Heviu lefanav, they bring vegetables before him to dip into another food and eat as kalpas. Now we take any vegetable, dip it in another food, and eat it. The common practice is to dip it in salt water, as Maran writes in Orach Chaim, chapter 473, halakha 6. Now the purpose of eating a vegetable at this point is to surprise the children and make them curious. Since vegetables are not usually eaten before the meal, the children will ask why this night is different. By making the children ask questions, we can fulfill the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, telling the story of the Exodus in the ideal way, which is by responding to their questions. The Mishnah continues, Mitabel b'chazeret. If no other type of vegetable is available, he eats dipped lettuce. Now the literal meaning of mitabel is he dips, but the Rav says it can also mean he eats, which is the meaning here, because in those times they often dip their foods in dressings. Now, if he has other vegetables, it's better to use them as kalpas rather than lettuce, because lettuce will be eaten later for the mitzvah of maror. Ad shemagia leparperet apat, eating the kalpas comes before eating the matzah, in our case, meaning nothing else may be eaten before the matzah. Now the Mishnah's point is that he may not eat lettuce again as maror until he has eaten the matzah, because the matzah must be eaten before the maror and not after. And this follows the sequence in the pasuk in Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 9, pasuk 11, Al matzot umorim yochluhu, with matzot and maror shall they eat the Pesach offering. The Mishnah continues now with the next step. Heviu lefanav matzah v'chazeret v'charoset u'shnei tavshilin. They bring before him matzah for the mitzvah of eating matzah and for the meal, because we know 3 matzot are served at this time. 2 whole ones for lechem mishneh, the 2 loaves of bread that are eaten at every Shabbat and Yom Tov meal. Here it's matzot, and a broken piece for the mitzvah of eating matzah. The broken piece recalls the Torah's description of matzah as the lechem oni, bread of the poor man, as it says in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 16, pasuk 3, who cannot afford a complete loaf. The blessing of hamotzi, which is always said before eating bread, is recited on the complete matzot, and the blessing for the mitzvah of eating matzah is recited on the broken piece. The Mishnah says we bring lettuce for the mitzvah of eating maror, although there are 5 types of vegetables that can be used for the mitzvah of maror, like we learned in chapter 6, Mishnah 2. Lettuce is preferred, as the Gemara says on page 39a in Masechet Pesachim. We bring charoset, in which the maror is dipped. Now charoset is a dip made from nuts, figs, apples, and other fruits that are crushed and mixed with fruit vinegar, thin strips of ginger and cinnamon resembling straw, which the Jews had to gather in Egypt, are placed on top. Its thick texture symbolizes the clay with which the Jews worked. This is how the Rav explains it. Different customs on how to make charoset, how to make this dip, and 2 cooked dishes, one to commemorate the Pesach offering and one to commemorate the Chagiga offering. Now, when the temple was standing, the meat of these 2 offerings was eaten during the Seder. The prevalent custom, Maran writes in Orach Chaim, chapter 473, Halacha 4, is to use a piece of roasted meat and a roasted egg as the 2 cooked dishes. The Mishnah now brings a dispute about the charoset. Afal pishen charoset mitzvah, even though dipping the lettuce, the maror, into charoset is not a mitzvah, we do it to eliminate the harmful effects of the lettuce. Now, the sap of lettuce contains a dangerous element, the Rav says, which is neutralized by dipping the lettuce in charoset. We eat lettuce all year round, and sometimes as kalpas at the Seder, without dipping it into charoset, because it's not usually harmful. The rabbis required only that the lettuce of maror be dipped into charoset so that performing the mitzvah will not involve any risk at all, as the Tosfot Yom Tov explains. Rabbi Eliezer Bar Tzadok Omer, but Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Tzadok, says mitzvah, that it is a mitzvah. And the Rav says the apple and the charoset remind us of the apple trees under which the Jewish women in Egypt gave birth without pain, and the thick texture of the charoset recalls the clay with which the Jews worked. The Mishnah continues, and in the time of the temple, they would bring before him the Pesach offering itself, together with the matzah, maror, and charoset. The chagiga offering was also brought in at this point. Nowadays, therefore, we bring in 2 cooked dishes together with the matzah, like we said earlier, one commemorating the Pesach and one commemorating the chagiga. And that is in Rabotai today's Mishna Yomi. The Rav does not tell us in this situation who the halacha follows, but that is in Rabotai today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen v'amen.